Hello, everyone. We are getting started a little bit late. Apologies for that. We're going to just let people take their seats and get started just momentarily. Wonderful. I think everyone is here. Since we're starting late, I'll keep it really quick. Welcome to the UXPA International webinar. I'm going to do some, just want to give you some information about some things that are coming up before I pass it on to our guest. The UXPA has a webinar also next month on June 25th, where our special guest will be Margot Stern. She is an author of a new upcoming book called Good Job: Designing Interviews and Interviewing in Design. For more information, you can visit our website, uxpa.org. Also, the UXPA International has a conference every year. There are still tickets for the conference that is being held next month, June 16 through 19 in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Tickets are still available. And for that, you can visit a slightly different website. You can go to UXPA 2025. That's UXPA2025.org. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the guest of today's webinar, Luz Delgado. She is going to be presenting a topic called Designing for Vulnerability: A Journey into Transforming Products and Services for Everyone. Luz, let me pass it on over to you.
Okay, I will share my screen.
And while you're doing that, I want to invite people to, if you have any questions for Luz while she's giving the presentation, you can use the Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen and submit your question there.
Okay. Sorry, I don't see my notes. So I'm looking for them. Okay, I'm fine. So sorry for that. Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining for this webinar. My name is Luz Delgado, and I'm a strategic designer, and I also work in inclusion. And we're going to talk about that topic that for me personally and professional are important, is how can we design for vulnerability and how can we design for inclusion. The reason why this is so important to me is because as a designer, it started as a living experience. I've experienced exclusion myself because of my hair. I grew up in Dominican Republic, where when I was young, Afro hair was seen as wrong, unprofessional, so I have to always straighten my hair. Also, I live in France now, and I have face bias due to my accent or my origins. I also have ADHD and anxiety, so sometimes it can also impact how I focus, process, or connect with people. And all this lived experience have shaped the way I approach design. But because for me, design should not only solve problems, it's also a tool to include, empower, and represent. So today we're gonna share. I'm gonna share with you some key principles of inclusive design, some real life examples, and some tools to help you design more inclusively, starting tomorrow or next week. I don't know. I hope so. Maybe you are new into inclusive design or you are already exploring it. So I just want to share a little bit how I approach this subject and some examples and tools that you can use. So I think the first thing to be able to design for inclusion is understand exclusion. As a designer, sometimes we create products and services that they give us this illusion of we have to design for everyone, and this illusion of neutral design. And designing for everyone at the end means designing for no one in particular. So we are in this universal way of thinking, but we are actually centering in stereotypes and norms and pushing people to get out of the conversation. For example, as you see in my slide, we know, for example, the one size that we can say, okay, one size fits all. At the end, it depends. So we need to understand that a single solution not always work for everyone, um, because not everyone match the norms or the happy path that we are trying to conceive. So I think that's one of the first things. Um, Also, when we talk about inclusion, there's so many concepts that I think that is important to understand the difference, and to align with the people we are working with and the people we are building products with. For example, we can listen to the word diversity, and diversity is who's in the room, what are our difference in a product, in a service, in a room. The inclusion is about feeling safe, heard, and valued in that space. The equity is more deeper, is that is does everyone has fair access, the same support? Uh, are, are we treating everyone the same? Are we giving each person what they need? And there's also the concept of intersectionality that reminds us that when we experience exclusion, it's not an isolated thing. Our identities, gender, race, disabilities, class overlap. Sometimes it can amplify the barriers we face. So I think it's important to understand these terms to design more intentional with awareness and care. And I can say, for example, accessibility, it's part of inclusion and equity. For example, everyone has the right to have access to products or services. And when we talk about exclusion in the design process, uh, I I put this image of the double diamond that we can be used to see, because it's not just the final result, it's inside the process. For example, when we are in the discovery process, who gets to speak? Do we reach for different voices in our user research, or we are just listening to the same kind of people? When we define or do ideation, we are framing the problem. Are we framing the problem on a dominant point of view, or are we framing the problem also thinking about vulnerable people or people that has less privilege or access to the same things as the people that we are thinking about? Um, Also, in the develop step, it happens because sometimes we just imagine all typical users. Uh, of course, it's easier be to do something that works for all, but at the end, it's important to think about the diversity and the different use cases scenario and the real needs, because also I think sometimes we create things that are perfect but are not built for just humans. In the delivery phase, it's also do we try and validate with the same user profiles? Do we leave realities outside of the loop? And that's why it's important to think in each phase about inclusion. And the first questions to ask as a designer is who's not in the room and what are we missing? I think it's the starting point, is to be aware of the fact that maybe certain voices are missing, maybe we're making assumptions about our users. These assumptions can become barriers. So every time you start a project, I think it's important to take a step back and ask yourself this. And something that can actually help to understand the blind spots that we can have is to think about these categories that can represent the difference that we might need to address in our product, and this is what I call the vulnerabilities. It's things that can make us not have the same equity in products or services. For example, neurodiversity, different life situations, for example, immigration, accidents, the systemic bias or discrimination like racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia are things that can make us not have the same equity. Also, mental health and psychological disorders are important. Anxiety, for example. Of course, disabilities that we address a lot in accessibility, like visual, physical, or hearing disability. Something also that is interesting to explore is the invisible and conditions or chronic illness that sometimes can also change the way we face the world or we interact with products and service. And the awareness is the first step, and thinking about those things can make us aware or notice who's not in the room and make space for those realities. Sometimes we see inclusion as something that is nice to have, but I think it's something that is essential because when we exclude, we can lose user trust, also legal and reputational risk. Sometimes it means poor usability, so lower conversion, and also public backlash. I have this example that I like to talk about when I talk about business and inclusion. For example, L'Oreal for years was in a gap because they ignored for years in investing for products for darker skin tones, and they left a gap in the market. So in 2017, there was a competitor that actually launched products with different shades for different skin colors, and L'Oreal has to force themselves to catch up, and because they lose some market share. So I think when we don't include from the start, also we leave space for the competitors. So I think inclusion is not just about fixing gaps, it's also about creating bold, meaningful solutions from the start. And there's an example that I would like to share. In Europe, there's an European bank that partnered with a fintech to develop this experimental talking payment card to make the cards accessible for people blind and visually impaired, because as you know, when you pay with your card, you don't necessarily see what is in the machine. So the card connects via Bluetooth and a mobile app. It reads out loud in the payment terminal the information in real time. And that's important because it allows blind and visually impaired users to hear the amount, because they can be part of a fraud just because of that. And it makes people with disabilities dependent and from other people, and it's not them that are having trouble, is the way the product, the system is made. So it's important because it's also a message that says that the product sees those needs and that they matter. So at the end, when we made a solution for this group, it can help everyone. So instead of thinking that something it can be for everyone, we take in account the specificities of different profiles, and then it will help other people. So for example, there is this curb cut effect. The fact that when we design for one, it can benefit for all. For example, this like the curb cut in the streets were designed for wheelchair users, but now there are parents with strollers that use them, people with suitcase, delivery workers, or travelers with trolleys. So we can think about those vulnerabilities, and then it will also help other situations, and it can drive innovation, and solving for a few at the end, it can improve the life for many. So it's very important. So sometimes when you work in those subjects, the people that work on the business part will say that it costs a lot, and actually the benefits of inclusive design, it can be a larger market reach, stronger brand reputation, better usability for everyone, and also there's legal or regulatory compliance. Sometimes nowadays there's also laws about that, and it's also a driver for innovation. So it's important. It's not a cost, it's an investment. So it's important to put that it pays off in reach, reputation, and long-term impact. So something that can also help, do you know, for example, empathy map? Maybe it's a tool that we use as designers, but sometimes we just stay in the surface. Something that can help is go deeper beyond the classical things that we think about. For example, do we thought about access? How does the person have or lack to act or decide about the product? What are their fears, motivations, and how they shape their behavior? Are there stigma, judgments, or social pressure that they are facing? Are external structural blocking, limiting them, holding them back? Do they have systemic barriers? What are their life contexts? What does their daily reality look Like, does these people work? They have family responsibilities, a housing situation. What are their real life contexts? Something that it's important to look at is also mental health. Are they going through difficult time? Are they feeling tired, overwhelmed, emotionally drained? Because we are not going to have the same experience with a product or service if we are feeling tired, if we are going through difficult times. And that's something that can make us vulnerable, and we don't need to be a person with a disability to experiment that. So that's why it's really important, if we want to make a more humanity design, to think about those things. So normally classic empathy maps, as I said, ask what users say, think, do, and feel. But designing with inclusion, we go further and we think about what are the things that limit them. As I said at the beginning, one of the steps where we can exclude is research. And so things that are important to think about is to, for example, involve users earlier and not just at the end. It's something that it's for even when we don't think about inclusion, we have to do that, but in inclusive design is even more important. Not just use data, but also storytelling. What are the stories of the people using my product? And of course, co-design with people who have lived experience, the different categories that I said to you, like different kinds of people, like diversity in your co-design process. And not designed for people, but with people can change everything. Also, we usually do usability testing. And sometimes we test with the same types of user. Sometimes it's because it's hard to find people, but we don't need a lot of people or a huge budget. We need just different perspective, people that think differently and have different context in their daily lives. So are we including neurodivergent users, older adults, people with low vision, migrants and non-native speakers, also people with different financial realities? So if we think about also inclusion, and if we can define a simple starting point, it can be the awareness. As I said, the first step is to take the time to understand our own assumptions, our own blind spots, how we perceive the difference and the people that are different than us. And also representation is the second step that is really important. So it's including different voices in the process, as I said. Also iteration, we can test, learn, adapt, find a way to be able to adapt the product also to the different kind of situations. For example, how can we address our product for blind people? Do we thought about how they use their tools to be able to, do we put audio in our platform? And I think it's okay that it's not perfect from the beginning, but it's important to learn every day. And I think something that is also important is the sustainability to make this inclusion a part of the everyday design culture, and also be there for talk about those things and start baby steps about inclusion. And I'm just gonna leave you with these things. What one thing that you will change tomorrow in your design practice, and we can discuss about this and make it more conversation after my presentation. And I think that sometimes exclusion happens without us noticing. It's not intentional, but it's real and it hurts. Inclusion doesn't mean perfection. It starts with listening better, asking the right questions, and adjusting how we work and doing small changes. And third, designing for the margins raises the bar for everyone. So I would like to discuss with you about what are the things that you would like to change in your design practice tomorrow, and what are your questions about inclusion and your point of view, so we can have conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Luz. That was great. This is I think this is a very it's a very timely topic, and it's something that seems to really it seems to be a topic that doesn't even go away. I don't know if you agree that this is something that some people have been talking about for quite a while, but probably bears repeating. So I think it's, thank you for that. I want to invite people who might have any questions, or maybe they want Luz to expand on something, or maybe they have a different point of view that you would like Luz to comment on, is to look for the—
I see some questions too.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, there are already some questions that have come in. If you have not submitted a question yet, or even if you have and you have another one, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit it, and we will try to get to it. And I will facilitate some of this this Q&A. And Lucy, feel free if there's a particular question that jumps out at you. But let's just I'll just start at the top. And there's some anonymous questions here. Someone points out that this is a great topic, and I appreciate the presenter's argument. Does she have any recommendations for ensuring that user testing is also inclusive? I do recall you talked about this a little bit. Does she have any recommendations for recruiting a diverse group of research participants? So Luz, do you, the kind of conceptually, it's one thing to say, oh, I want to include different people, but do you have any advice for how to find a diverse group of people? Like, what are some specific techniques?
I've been working on a research project about inclusion for 2 years, and one of the things that I think that it's important is to, sometimes we think, how can I find those people? I'm not gonna go out in the streets and ask people, what are your situations, so I can recruit you for my user testing. So I think something that can be helpful is, for example, here where I live in France, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that work, for example, with autistic people and with people with disabilities. And in the moments where I have done user testing with vulnerable people, the first thing is to be aware what people I'm looking for. For example, I worked for a project that we wanted to address people with intellectual disabilities. so people with Down syndrome or autistic people. So what I did is that I contacted different kind of nonprofit associations, and I also thought about how can I be in my process of as an animator of user testing, take care of that person. And I did this user testing in distance. I don't know, like in like a Zoom. And I spent a lot of time getting to know these participants and asking questions to be able to understand what can they were able to do, what were their difficulties, what were their preference. So I was in a position to adapt myself to also like, for example, I did one of the interviews and I told the participant it's okay if you don't put your camera on, and I took a lot of time. It was a testing with a easy to read and um, Falk. I don't know how do you say that in English, but it's a way where you write easy to read.
You mean that you use language that is
Yeah,
more accessible to people, maybe at a
yeah,
reading level that is simpler?
yeah. And so the exercise was about reading these pages and understanding what if they understand the message and stuff. So I spent a lot, maybe a lot more time that I will have spent with a person not with intellectual disability. And one of the participants, their dad were there. So it can also happen that like to you have a companion that comes to the test and helps this person be able to do that. And I think here also in France now there are also panelists that are working with inclusion panels. I don't know where people are from, but I think it's also something, as you said, we've been talking about this for a long time, but we are still not there. So things are getting developed, but I think that's something important. So that's why I said I also know people that designers here that they started at some point. They decided that there was one blind spot. For example, I think we have a blind spot about blind people or people with low vision. So let's explore that. So you won't necessarily have the whole as have all the questions from the beginning, but it's like any project. You iterate and you keep going and you see, do I how can I address that in other ways? So I think I answered to the question.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you mentioned iteration, and it sounds like that is even if even if perhaps you have design. I think what you're saying, tell me if I'm correct, is that even if you already have designed a product and service that currently exists, it's not too late to revisit that and to say, how can I make my design even more inclusive? And so there could be, yeah, I suppose you can continue to go back and find out ways over time how to welcome more people in. Is that right? That it doesn't all have to be done at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that that's how I think. I don't think I give you a list of situations, but maybe your product it's the more difficult blind spot is for example migrants, because it's a service that is addressed to change your passport, for example. I don't know. Or so I think every product have their own situations that can be more and more, if the situation is more extreme and it will create harm, then it's more priority to work on that.
Excellent. Okay. We have the questions are starting to come in. So thank you for those who are posting it. One that seems particularly appropriate, I think the answer will be a quick yes. An anonymous attendee says, it sounds like you're talking about harm reduction. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that this is part of the process of designing for vulnerabilities, is like that's why I said at the beginning, the first question is to think who's in the room, who is more in need, who we are forgetting, and maybe it's our product can be a harm for some population, and then you can also make your roadmap for inclusion with that in mind.
Right. So I think I hear you saying that this is not simply a measure to increase market share, or is to kind of be a better competitor, but it's also to avoid hurting others, maybe unintentionally, through your design. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Pauline says, thank you so much. Your presentation was very interesting and crystal clear. I work in service design for a public organization in France too, and I'm already struggling to include users in the process. Teams do not want or are not used to working with users and using co-design methods. Do you have any advice?
Thank you for that question. I understand. It's like everything. For example, even doing UX research can be a struggle, even if we are talking about that for 20 years. So I think the best way to address that is to do baby steps and start somewhere. Like, that's why I'm saying, don't go to your job tomorrow and say, we need to address for blind people, deaf people, for everyone, and then you're gonna get overwhelmed. So I think an idea is also to understand, if you're working for a public organization, what are the people that can be more in struggle, and how can you be able to contact those kind of people, and how can you also work with those people, like step by step, like maybe doing more guerrilla testing, more getting also to know different people can also help you as a designer in your process. So I think it's sometimes you need to make the first step with your client or with your employee, and then start small.
Excellent. Claire says, hi, I'm a UX designer who works for an organization that seeks to center marginalized communities who experience menopause. Something that I've been challenged by is that I have been receiving feedback that among the people I am designing for, such as older Black women and trans people, their needs differ a lot. How do you prioritize or find a way for these marginalized communities to feel centered despite their different needs and clashes?
Yeah, that's a good questions, because when we also work in this point of view, we are gonna find some contrast things. So it's like any design decision. We need to try to understand, for example, what are the needs for Black women? Are their needs gonna harm the other, and or not? Can I make a personalized experience for both of them? So I think it's also a decision. I don't have the exact situation, but of course, for example, I can give a perfect example. Now we use a lot inclusive writing with a point in the middle, and it can be difficult for people with dyslexia, for example, to read the text like that. So it can be, we can use other ways of writing to be more neutral, for example, and help to find the balance between those two needs. I want to have inclusive writing, but I also want to address for dyslexic users. You can also say, okay, I can still make this choice for using this writing, but maybe in my website, there's going to be a place where people can change the way they have the text. So maybe there's a variation that is accessible, and I can just, so there's no right answer every time. It's just try to find the right balance. For example, for the website that I said that we were working for people with intellectual disabilities. And what we did is that we find a middle point. Like, we want to, everything that we put in the website is easy to read, but we can put some features that can, for people that needs more information, can go further.
Right. I have there are two questions that seem to be kind of similar, so I'm going to just combine them a little bit. And it has to do with involving non-designers in the process. Can you provide any like specific examples of like how to go about somehow including other people when they can't directly participate? So for example, you gave some examples of talking to some people who have who had intellectual disabilities and got to know them and everything. And so but do you have any advice with the situation where you can't talk to those people directly? Are there ways that people can still do some good research or design something with it's like by either involving people in a secondhand way? For example, are there some good representatives, some maybe experts who can represent these other audiences?
Yeah, that's something that I was working with about the subject of autism, and the autistic spectrum is so large that there will be people in the spectrum that are able to participate and that are able to design things. And for example, there are non-verbal people in the spectrum. So while I was addressing that, I was aware of that situation. So what I did is that I contacted people in the spectrum that could be able to answer, but I also went to talk to experts that were working with people in the spectrum that are non-verbal, or families that were dealing and helping people in the spectrum that were non-verbal. And like that, I could have a more realistic perspective. And of course, sometimes, depending on the product, I know, for example, that maybe a product, the person in the spectrum, nonverbal and dependent, won't be able to use it. But even if I try to, because it's someone that is dependent, so I have to think about the people that are helping them to do the things. So, for example, I used to I used to work in a mental health hospital. So you have to think about the whole ecosystem. There's going to be patients that are not going to be able to participate, but how can I make them be part of the experience, or how can I address their problems differently?
So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. You're saying that maybe the sort of the users or the end users of the service, in the case of in case of like the example you gave, either in the hospital or even nonverbal people who are like autistic but nonverbal, is that you might also want to serve the people that support them. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so that's maybe even a new audience that hadn't even crossed my mind. Let's see. There's another question here, and it's fairly fundamental, but I think it's a good one. Is someone wants to know how you define the term co-design. They said they have a hard time explaining it to others.
I think co-design, it's when you do, for example, an ideation workshop, and you also invite users. For example, it's something that I have experiment working, for example, with people with diabetes. I don't know,
Diabetes.
diabetes. So the fact that I co-designed the solution with them, of course, you also have to be aware of the fact that those people are not designers, but it's important to understand how can I implicate them in the process. You can implicate them in the research process by talking to them, but also in the ideation process, co-designing with them, or testing and iterating with them. So there's different ways that you can co-design. So it's how can I integrate the users and the people that are, I don't have diabetes. So if I have to work on a project for that, I need to be with those people and not just at the end testing the results.
So
it's going to be probably too late.
Right. And so you're saying that co-design is not just it's not just about research participants getting, it's not just about getting feedback or testing, but it's also involving them in involving other people, a diverse group of people, non-designers, in the ideation process, right? And like trying to like, do you have ideas for solving this problem? Would you, am I defining that?
Yeah, is that what I wanted to say at the beginning, that of course they're not designers, so we have to also translate this information into valuable outcomes. Because yeah, sometimes I do ideation workshops with users, and it's an interface, for example, and you need to understand what is the background of what they're saying. You know what I mean? For example, if the user make a button there in the interface, you also have to make your design job after that and say, okay, why this person put a button there? Is actually it is the button, or it's a need that needs to be accomplished?
Right. So let's do one last question since we're close to time, and this is one from me because it's something that I think about a lot, particularly when it comes to when you mention the word vulnerability and working with people who are vulnerable. That also seems to kind of have a connection where you have to consider ethics. You have to consider care when engaging other people. Do you have any advice, or do you agree that perhaps ethics need to be shaped to ensure that vulnerable research participants or vulnerable co-designers or co-design participants that you need to might need to adapt it, or you might need to change how you approach them so you're not exploiting, you're not doing harm in the research. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's why I was saying, giving my experience with projects, you also need to change the way you do things and care more, as I can say. I also I'm also a teacher in design, and I work a lot with junior designers, and I think something that can happen easily is that we do the research as an automatism, and we are not actually listening to the people. So I think inclusion is also that. In which condition I'm doing this research, where I'm putting this person comfortable, how I take the time to understand their studies and be able to go more deep. And of course, maybe it's going to take more time than just a 20 minutes interview. And because now we have AI, I'm just going to put the retranscript into the chat GPT. And how can I actually listen to people and care about listening to that person and having that conversation to understand what they really need?
Very good. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. But one question: how can people stay in touch with your work or follow you?
I forget to put that, but I'm on LinkedIn. This is where I'm more active. So you can, I don't know if the LinkedIn is in the UXPA website, my LinkedIn, but for me, it's okay to share it. And I will share you also the presentation so you can put it online.
Okay, we can do that. We can put your LinkedIn profile on the UXPA website.
And don't hesitate to contact me if you have to keep the conversation. I did a really small talk because I don't like to make a monologue, but I will be happy to keep the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. I have a feeling people are going to take you up on that. So just a few things as we wrap up here. I just want to remind you some things on the UXPA international calendar. We have an annual conference coming up June 16 through 19. That's next month in Amsterdam, Netherlands. You can visit our website for more information. And you can also, soon you will see a posting for next month's webinar, which is on June 25. That's going to have author Margot Stern is going to give a presentation. And this webinar is going to be available on YouTube as well as the UXPA website, probably in the next week or so. So you can find it there. And again, we'll put Luz's LinkedIn profile there. And I think also she told me earlier that she'll post a copy of her, or she'll make a copy of her presentation available. So in case you're wondering about that, you'll be able to see it. So, Luz, thank you again so much for joining us and for giving such a heartfelt and important presentation and topic. I'm very grateful to you for doing that today.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Until then, we'll see you all online. Bye bye.
See you. Bye.